Alright, man, peace. So a couple of weeks ago, I did a video pertaining to LeBron James and Kevin Durant being driven around in an Uber by Kerry Champion, one of the anchors on SportsCenter on ESPN. And LeBron James decided that he was going to levy an attack against the President of the United States, Donald Trump, on a very low level. He showed that he truly does not understand the system that runs America and the fact that Donald Trump is really just a secretary, a financial secretary who has to make sure that America is paying back the debt that it owes to the international bankers through the collection agency known as the Federal Reserve. He was trying to make it personal, talking about how Donald Trump doesn't, quote unquote, give a fuck about the people, and he's a bum, so on and so forth. It caused an anchor, a political pundit on Fox News by the name of Laura Ingraham, to levy her own counterattack against LeBron by stating that he should just shut up and dribble, which many in the liberal media tried to assign a racial aspect to, when in reality she was just marginalizing him in the same way that he tried to marginalize Donald Trump. Kobe Bryant, in the aftermath of that whole situation, won an Academy Award at the Oscars for his animated short, Dear Basketball, and he decided that he was going to hitch his wagon onto LeBron's woke star by stating that I know that I'm just supposed to shut up and dribble, so on and so forth. I stated in the video that I did covering that topic that LeBron better watch out because Kobe's going to try to muscle in on that woke action. Please understand that in order to keep yourself relevant in the mainstream media, you have to be quote unquote woke. All woke is code word for Luciferian. That's all it is. All a woke Negro is a low level Luciferian. They don't understand what their ideologies are really about. Now, Kobe Bryant is a higher level woke athlete, meaning what? He's a Luciferian outright, as is LeBron. And that brings us to this gentleman right here, Mr. Charles Barkley, who himself has always stated in the past that he does not adhere to a lot of quote unquote woke principles, but you're going to see here that he has finally conformed. Most likely because he's gotten a series of decrees or directions telling him that you're going to promote LeBron James and his woke crusade. Because Charles Barkley is a foot soldier for Lucifer, and don't get it twisted. That's why he's always so eager to cross-dress. And by the way, don't be shocked if in the coming weeks or months you see Kobe Bryant cross-dress and try to act as if it's to promote one of his new projects. Look for that. Look for Kobe to cross-dress very soon and to act as if it's to promote some new project that he has in the works, or for him to maybe guest star on some comedy show and cross-dress. But anyway, they decided that they were going to talk about this entire issue with Charles Barkley and Kobe Bryant acting as advocates for LeBron James and his statements. They're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
This country's had a great tradition of athletes speaking their mind. Muhammad Ali changed the way people thought about Vietnam. Jim Brown had people thinking about race. But some people don't want to hear from professional athletes. Like this.
I don't want to hear from professional athletes unless they're informed. I don't want to hear from anyone unless they're informed. Just because you have the right to run your mouth doesn't mean that you should. As a matter of fact, if you don't know what you're talking about and you're running your mouth, you're actually a detriment to the situation at hand, not a help. You're not alleviating any problems when you're running your mouth and you don't know what you're talking about.
This lady on Fox News who told LeBron James to shut up and dribble. So LeBron, keep on dribbling and don't ever shut up. And maybe one day you can host SNL for a full time just like me.
Now notice, someone clearly wrote that speech for Charles Barkley. And for those of you who remember back in the day, Charles Barkley, as I stated in a previous video, he pretty much was the only so-called black athlete in the late 80s, early 90s who would speak about race and didn't give a shit. And he became world renowned for a commercial that he did in which he stated point blank that I am not a role model. I remember that sent shockwaves throughout the sports world because this was during the early 90s where all of the top most prominent athletes were being used as corporate whores. Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, all of them. They all stated that they agreed with Charles, but they could not have said that or put forth that sentiment themselves because they were property of corporations. Now, Charles Barkley was property of Nike, but he chose to speak out against using athletes as idols and role models because he understood that he's not a role model. One thing that you can never call Charles Barkley is a hypocrite until now. It's very obvious to me that he's had a battery put in his back, and he's been made to understand that you must join the woke movement, Charles Barkley, because he's been a Luciferian for the longest time anyway. He practices a lot of the principles of Bacchus, that being cross-dressing. He has no problem cross-dressing, kissing men on TV, etc. And Kobe Bryant has joined in. That is why they awarded him with that statuette. That's not to say that he doesn't have a vision. That's not to say that his animated short was not good. But when they gave him that award, that was their way of showing the world Kobe is down with the quote-unquote program. Now they're going to try to come against him because of the allegations that were made against him over 15 years ago in regards to him, quote-unquote, allegedly raping that girl. But they didn't give him that statuette for Ptah for nothing. So once again, watch for him to possibly cross-dress in the near future.
As basketball players, we're really supposed to shut up and dribble, but I'm glad we do a little bit more than that. Thank you, Academy, for this amazing honor.
Saturday Night Live and the Oscars, Charles Barkley and Kobe Bryant both had huge platforms this weekend, and they used them to reiterate how athletes should continue to speak out on social issues. Stephen A., what's your reaction to what we saw this weekend?
Well, before Stephen A. speaks, let me say once again, the NBA is a woke league. All of these top-level athletes in the NBA, they must be woke. Once again, when I say woke, I mean pro-Marxist, pro-socialist, pro-Hegelian dialectic, pro-Discordian. That's what I mean when I speak on woke. I've touched on this, on my channel over and over again, repetitively, particularly after the Colin Kaepernick situation, the Michael Bennett situation, where they have these different athletes planted throughout the sports world who are meant to bring discord, to promote chaos so that they can implement their own new order. And it's very, very clear that Kobe Bryant and Charles Barkley have been sent a certain memo to say, look, this is what you're going to say. This is what you're going to try to elicit to the public. This is the sentiment that you're supposed to elicit to the public. And also, please keep in mind that Charles Barkley, Kobe Bryant, and LeBron James are all assets of Nike, whose current campaign is called, quote-unquote, equality. Once again, these guys are all corporate assets. They're quote-unquote actors, okay? Their job is to put forth whatever sentiment their sponsors want them to put out there and put forth for the people. That's it. So when you hear them trying to make these political statements and comment on societal issues, it's at the behest of their sponsor, Nike. Charles Barkley is still associated with Nike. He has been for what, probably 30 years now.
Well, I mean, listen, it's I can't say enough about Kobe, and I'll touch on that in my final take. It was just tremendous to see him capture an Oscar. I don't put anything past Kobe Bryant, but I never thought about that. An Academy Award, that's something special. But
once again, the Academy Award, or the quote-unquote Oscar, the name Oscar is an allusion to Osar or Osiris Oscar. And that statuette is of the Kemetic god Ptah, Ptah, Ptah Min, who is Cush. He is the craftsman god. They used to award those statuettes back in ancient Kemet to the top craftsmen and artisans of their day, the top entertainers of their day. There is nothing new under the sun.
But I would tell you this as it pertains to what Charles Barkley said in regards to not being quiet, and Kobe Bryant reminding the world that, there's more that we could do. I mean, you just look at it and you're reminded of the skill sets that these individuals have, and along with how conscientious they are. And I'm not just talking about social issues. I'm talking about being conscientious enough to be inspirational leaders for communities at large.
Well, that's the problem, sir. You keep trying to promote this idea that athletes are supposed to be inspirations for the so-called black community. What are you truly saying about the concept of leadership within the home, Stephen A. Smith? Basically, what you're saying is that idea of being led in your home by a father and a mother is something that's dated. and that now we must further plug into the television and allow athletes to lead us. And there's nothing against the average professional athlete, but the average professional athlete has shown that they're not even fit to lead their own households when you understand what goes on in many of their households. They basically reap the first grapes of the vintage in this society. They're put on pedestals. They really don't have much to relate to with the struggles of the quote-unquote common man, which really makes them inadequate leaders. When you look at most great leaders in history, they had to have some type of simpatico with the struggles of the everyday quote-unquote working man. If you don't have that, it's going to be very difficult for you to be a leader, because you can't, you don't really understand or grasp what needs to be done. And this is why I've stated that the best thing that LeBron James does is when he donates his time and his money to his community. That's a great thing. But when he starts making all these political statements, when he doesn't know what he's talking about, he's not helping anyone. And really all he's doing is the biddings of Nike. That's all he's doing.
When you are an individual that has a level of greatness, particularly coming out of the African American community, folks are quick to tell you what you should be doing. They're quick to tell you how to be pigeonholed.
Well, that sounds like a you problem, brother, because quite frankly, so-called black people, they love to tell everybody else what they should be doing, when solutions tend to be very simple. The main solution for the so-called black community is for the so-called black man to first discipline himself. That's the number one thing. When the so-called black man disciplines himself, he's going to do a better job of deciding who he's going to procreate with. And he's going to weed out the unwanted aspects of his quote-unquote community. Once he understands how to choose the right woman or women, when he procreates with her or them, they're going to bring up children in a stable environment. That's how that works. It's not about looking at Kobe or LeBron James or Charles Barkley to lead your so-called community. That's why the community is so-called. Because how could you have a community when you don't commune? You don't come together. You keep looking for someone else to solve the problems in your house. You keep pointing to the president or to Caucasians or to athletes to solve the problems. Problem is very simple. When you come home and your house is dirty, you have to clean it up. You can't look outside your door and say, how come somebody else didn't clean this up for me?
And to limit yourself in terms of your options, your marketability, etc. And the greatest thing about sports is that so many sports figures have stepped up to the plate to enforce the belief, you don't get to limit us. We're not one-dimensional.
No, sir. The greatest thing about sports is that sports is a microcosm of the human condition. I've stated this over and over again. Through sports, you get to see who gives up, who perseveres, who's strong, who's weak, who knows how to build, who knows how to destroy, right? Who can persevere. These are things that you learn through sports. That's the most important thing about sports and why I like to use it as a backdrop to a lot of my commentary, because I know that it does enrapture many so-called black men. But please keep in mind that the term sport means to joke or to entertain. That's all. At the end of the day, we glorify certain men because of what they can do with with an oblong ball that's made out of pigskin, or with a round ball, and they can jump real high and throw it through a rim. And these men get glorified in this society. Please understand that when this society comes to an end, none of their exploits are going to be remembered. You had great and prominent men who lived during the Roman Empire who were great athletes. And we know of very few of them today. Very few.
There are an abundance of things that we could bring to the table. We were just never in the position where someone was willing to give us the opportunity to spread our wings and fly. But if you were to do that for us, you'd see what we're capable of.
Now, did you hear what Stephen A. Smith did? Once again, he very passively begged the so-called white man for attention. Please give me a chance, so-called white man. Let me show you what I can do to build up your society and keep your society going. That's what's called having a slave mentality.
And I think about, I'm thankful to Kurt Flood and, the father of free agency and the battles that he fought. I'm thankful to Muhammad Ali and his courage in the face of adversity, and all those who stood beside him and behind him, the Bill Russells, the Kareem Abdul-Jabbars, the Jim Browns of the world, even John Wooten, you know, the list goes on. And then we see somebody like Michael Jordan come along, and even though it was a different age and the advent of social media wasn't in play as of yet, the pressure that was on him to take what Dr. J had instigated to some degree and take that to another level. Magic Johnson being the businessman that he is, along with Michael Jordan, and now LeBron taking it to another stratosphere.
No, sir, LeBron is not taking it to another stratosphere. The greatest thing that LeBron has done, and I've said this previously in some of my videos, what he's done is he's shown the NBA athlete, particularly the so-called black male athlete in the NBA and in other sports, that you're not supposed to align yourself with an organization, with a city, with a fan base. You're bringing just as much to them as they're bringing to you. And this is part of the entitlement that many of these teams and these fan bases have when it comes to athletes, particularly so-called black athletes, to make them believe that they should be grateful for being allowed to make as much money as they make. The reason why they make as much money as they make is because they generate so much money. That's all it's about. When people get on their high horse and they talk about why athletes make so much more money than teachers, it's because there are far fewer people in the world who can do what Kobe Bryant does than what Miss McGillicuddy does in 4th grade math. It's no disrespect, but there's only one Kobe Bryant or LeBron James or Steph Curry on the planet Earth. There are a lot of Miss McGillicuddys. A lot. And that's what society and pay scales are all about. And that's just the truth of the matter.
But inspired by Kobe, particularly when they were in Beijing for the 2008 Olympics, and Kobe, and they went over to China, and Yao Ming is from there, and there were more posters of Kobe Bryant in Beijing than it was of Yao Ming, because Yao Ming wasn't a champion and Kobe was.
Yes, and also these so-called black athletes looked at as a god. I told you guys that in the video that I did on the lesbian WNBA player who wants to be paid like a man. Can't remember her name. I know her last name is McGautry. But I told you guys that all across the planet Earth, the black male athlete is viewed as a god.
These are the kind of things that led to individuals like LeBron and others really taking their brands to another level. So I'm incredibly proud that they speak in a subtle way.
Let me say this also. And I mentioned this concept in another video. Even though they try to demonize Michael Jordan as not being someone who wants to conform to the quote-unquote woke mentality, it's due to the legwork that Michael Jordan put in to assist the athlete in understanding how much he can monetize himself. Back in the late 80s and early 90s, Michael Jordan was the first athlete who used to go abroad to Britain, to Spain, to Italy, to China, to Japan, to put in the legwork to establish his name in these different environments in regards to being a marketable athlete, someone who you would want to buy his product. You can see footage on the internet still. There's one where him and Barkley are in Japan back in 97 or 98, and they're having a Papa Shot contest in Japan. This is back in like 98. I think Jordan had his hat on backwards, and him and Barkley were shooting the basketball at a moving basket. There's video of Jordan going to Britain and Italy back in 85 when he just came in the NBA. It's due to what he established by going all across the planet Earth and creating footprints for other athletes to follow. That's why you have a Steph Curry, a LeBron James who take those trips to China in the off season. Michael Jordan established that. Now, Michael Jordan has his shortcomings, but a lot of times it's become popular to highlight what he quote unquote didn't do for the black community, as opposed to understanding what he established for many of these current woke athletes that allows them to be woke and talk the shit that they talk without fear of economic repercussions. Very important.
In a not so subtle way in other respects, they reminded the world of what we're capable of. And when you talk about opening opportunities for those on the come up in our community, this is a shining example of how you can go about doing it.
The days of hiding and staying neutral are over. Social media is the reality, and there's not people are gonna have to take a stand. People want to know where you fall on the issues, and the idea that stick to sports That's long gone. And I got bad news for people who are resistant to change. It's never coming back. You can't defeat technology and the new world that way.
I agree. And notice the terminology that Max Kellerman used, the new world. Because the information grid has been set up under the inspiration of the god of the technological world, that being Lucifer. That's a video for another day, to, create this dragnet all across the planet Earth. But the dragnet has been created is also going to be a snare for the powers that be. Because this is why I tell you, brothers, the day of excuses is long gone. You cannot say that we don't know anything anymore, or we can't look up our history anymore, because the information is right at your fingertips. Literally, we don't need newspapers anymore. We find out about information before the newspaper gets printed. All these things are going to be used to precipitate the fall of this kingdom, of this society. All this information that gets shared. There was a time where a so-called black man living in Houston didn't know about certain statements or concepts or ideologies that so-called black men in Boston or New York were coming up with. Now you can find out about it. All you got to do is sign on to Facebook or YouTube. So this is how information and data will be spread all across the world. And it's going to precipitate the fall of this kingdom. Because as Max Kellerman says, yes, people are going to be forced to take a stand. And when you're forced to take a stand, that's going to lead to conflict. And conflict eventually leads to changes in regime.
The rules change and you're going to have to engage. And I think that's what Charles Barkley's talking about, who, by the way, is not only the biggest and best star on TV, period, in sports. He's the best sports personality and the biggest one and the most enjoyable one since Muhammad Ali. But damn, Chuck, could you show up and rehearse a little bit first before you... He sounded like he was reading those words for the first time. Come on, Chuck. Show up and rehearse. No. Look.
Chuck doesn't need to rehearse. Part of Chuck's appeal is that he's kind of adult.
Look. He knocked it out of the park, Max. That was a home run. Hold on 1 second, Will. Let me just say that the reason Laura Ingraham did what she did was, and I mentioned this in a final take, Will, she was trolling because she's selling beer and cars like the rest of us in the media.
That's partially true. She was trolling LeBron because LeBron was trolling Trump. This is why I stated that the political field is not something that LeBron really wants to get into. Not if he's knowledgeable of what he's going to have to deal with. Because no disrespect to the brother, he's a genius on the basketball court, but his brain is not aligned to deal with political rhetoric because he's not really interested in being knowledgeable. He's interested in gaining followers on Instagram and Facebook and Snapchat and Twitter, things of that nature. Once again, the emblem of Twitter is the bluebird because Twitter is about mind control. Please understand that one of the initial names of the MK Ultra program was Project Bluebird. That's why they used the bluebird on Twitter. Okay? It's Facebook Incorporated, FBI. All of these social media platforms are just meant for intelligence gathering. You know where they show you that? Look at the latest Jason Bourne movie. Basically, the plot of the Jason Bourne movie was that Tommy Lee Jones, who was the new head of the CIA, the director of the CIA, was using a fledgling social media platform to gather intelligence. And the creator of the social media platform, he felt like his conscience was so convicted that he could not hold it that secret anymore. And they decided that they were going to have to kill him. And that's when Jason Bourne got involved and blah, 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 blah. But please understand that that's what these social media platforms are really intended for. To intelligence gather. To find out, just how can people be manipulated in a mass way. It's much easier to cast spells to a group than it is individuals.
In the media, or in that case, gold to scared old people, whatever they're selling. And it's still getting mileage because Kobe Bryant at the Academy Awards and Charles Barkley on SNL are still responding to her. And that's one of the reasons for the trolling.
Yes, they're responding to her because they've been told to do so. And I'm going to say it again. Watch for Kobe Bryant to appear in drag relatively soon. Because he's going to have to show that he's all in to Hollyweird. And that means embracing his androgynous nature. Remember, the quote-unquote god of the theater is Bacchus, a.k.a. the Baphomet. The Baphomet is basically a consolidation of the quote-unquote father god, who is Cush, the mother goddess, who was Semiramis, and the sun, who was Nimrod. Okay? They all come together. So that is the entity that they venerate, the quote-unquote goat god, the Baphomet. So, and Kobe venerates that entity as well. Don't get it twisted. He was an apprentice of Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan is a venerator of the Baphomet. All these top-level elite entertainers are. If you refuse, they will not allow you to get up that high.
Okay, a couple things. And so first of all, Stephen A., what you said, I agree with wholeheartedly, and I would even try to expand upon it to say this. I think what Kobe and Charles Barkley both represent here, and this is just a quick 30 seconds on this.
Our corporate pawns.
They represent the ability of people, regardless of background, regardless of race, regardless of occupation, to reinvent themselves at the highest of levels. And it's just pretty amazing to watch Kobe go and achieve in another sphere, completely separate from one he dominated. And Charles, for that matter, completely and utterly be at the top of a game. I thought it was awesome, Max. I thought the skits, the monologue, and I know you're not criticizing Charles. I know you're awesome. Not. He's awesome, and he did a great job. Now, quickly, and I'm not looking for a fight. This is where we often disagree, Max. I agree. People should speak out if they feel so compelled. But I also would quote Charles Barkley in the past when he said, not everyone is qualified to do so.
Yes, and he's one of them. He's one of them who's not qualified to do so. And at one time, he understood that. So it's interesting that he has changed course, and now he wants to plunge headfirst into the quote-unquote woke rabbit hole. And the only connection is that what? He is a Nike asset. He is an agent of chaos and of discord. That has to be it, because please understand, at one point, Charles Barkley understood, all I am is an entertainer. It's not my place to be talking about social issues. So what's the change now? The change is what? What is it that connects Charles Barkley, Kobe Bryant, and LeBron James? There's one thing that connects them. That's Nike. Please understand, Nike is the goddess of victory. Nike is a sports outlet for the veneration of the mother goddess. Okay? That emblem, the swoosh, represents the ring around the planet Saturn. I mean, we can go all the way through most of these corporations, like Adidas, those three lines, they represent the three pyramids in ancient Kemet. So on and so forth. It's all over the place. All of these major corporations always show their allegiance to the archetypal triumvirate, the godly triumvirate that makes up the quote-unquote Baphomet.
Everyone knows what they're talking about. Not all athletes know what they're talking about. So you don't have to go on the record. You don't have to state your case. You can stay neutral. The vast majority of us should stay neutral, because we're not, and this is where we go, politics isn't what everyone's core center is or their defining factor. I don't want every athlete on Twitter. I don't want every athlete on social media telling me his latest opinion on gun control or the President of the United States.
I don't mind athletes talking about these type of issues like gun control or their views on the President of the United States. You can go ahead and speak your mind. Just be prepared to be raked over the coals if you don't know what you're talking about. And please understand that political banter has no end. Political banter is like going back and forth with a woman on her menstrual. That is a cave you don't want to walk into. Why would you want to argue with a woman on her menstrual? Why would you want to talk about politics? Either you know who you want to vote for or you don't. People start arguing about this nonsense and it never ends. Because all two politicians are two horns on the same devil. As I stated, if you truly want to change the system, you would eradicate the Federal Reserve and you would go back to a gold and silver standard, and you would repudiate the debt owed to the international bankers, and you state unequivocally that it is unconstitutional. That's the solution right there. Or a solution for part of the problem in America.
You don't have to be that. You don't have to do that. Do it. And I think Charles would say this, if you're qualified and you can back it up. And if you do, you don't get a free pass.
There's only
here's the fame and celebrity don't give you a free pass. You have to be ready to defend and battle your ideas.
I agree.
I understand the sentiment. However, the problem I have with the clickbait kind of outrage culture of social media is that it quiets, it has a chilling effect on public discourse. And the sense is now among many, and for good reason, if you don't
don't have a master's degree in public policy, well, you shouldn't weigh in because you're not up to date. And this, by the way, Will, this affects a lot of conservatives, I think, and people who feel like, wait a minute, I'm being attacked by modern culture constantly because I said something that sounds right to me. I'm sorry that I'm not up to date on the latest cutting edge academia, right?
Well, here's the thing, Max Kellerman. Once you decide that you're going to become a public figure and you gain a high level of affluence and you put stock in how many people are quote unquote following you on social media, then yes, you're going to be held highly accountable for what you say about politics and about social issues. Why is that? Because there's a reason why they're called followers. Followers tend to listen to what you say and to believe what you say and to try to go along with what you say. That's why on this channel, I always tell brothers what? I'm not looking for fans. I don't want you to be a fan of mine. I want your woman to be a fan of yours. Your children should be fans of yours. That's why I tell you to look up everything that I say. Look it up. Because I'm not trying to create a cult of personality. LeBron James is. So yes, he does bear a high level of responsibility for the things that he says. Because if he has 40 million Twitter followers, that's 40 million people who are going to be highly influenced by his political statements.
I think that has a chilling effect on public discourse, that people shouldn't be so scared to express how they feel, and there shouldn't be such a kind of mob mentality where social media ire is directed at someone because they spoke something that is outdated or considered no longer mainstream thought or not the cutting edge academic thought. It's okay.
No, it's not always okay. It's okay for you to have a regular opinion if you're a regular dude. If you're a celebrity, the term celebrity literally means a star, right? Celebrity or ceiling, they have the same root. It means up in the sky. Okay? So when you decide that you want to attain a high level of affluence in this society, then you have to, there's a lot of bad that goes along with it. Once again, like Uncle Ben said, with great power comes great responsibility. LeBron James is a big boy, though. He knew that what he said about Donald Trump was going to make waves and make ripples. He understands what he's being used for by Nike and his political sponsors, because he does have political sponsors, because a lot of politicians are associated with Nike. Nike is a lobbyist for Hillary Clinton. So he understands very well what his job is. His job is to say little shit to stir the pot. He's an agent of chaos. Now Nike has recruited Kobe and Charles Barkley to join in.
You need to aim your ire at employers who are quick to get folks out of there because they've expressed a belief or opinion that the masses may disagree with, and as a result, it's made folks uncomfortable.
Why is that? Because it could affect the money, Stephen A. So if you're a corporation and one of your assets, one of your employees decides that they're going to go off the cuff and make certain statements politically that could alienate a certain constituency that you market your wares to or your products to, then yes, that person may have to be removed. If you don't want that to happen to you, don't work for a major corporation or don't make politically, quote unquote, polarizing statements.
Because when you look at these athletes, they do have the courage to speak out, and we applaud them. But a worst case scenario is that folks speak out against you, and you still go home with a few $1 million in your coffers without being worried about how you're going to make a living.
Exactly. That's why I said, who do you thank for that? You thank Mr. Michael Jordan for that. When people want to rant and rave about how Jordan never did anything for this and never did, it sounds so pathetic. I mean, how do you look as a grown-ass man talking about what Michael Jordan should have did for you? Get the hell out of here. But point being is this. Understand that Michael Jordan is the one who created or laid the groundwork for these athletes to be able to talk the shit that they talk. Not fearing ramifications or not having any compunctions about what could possibly befall them because of their statements.
But if somebody else speaks out, they don't have that luxury if repercussions come down the pike. And so when we talk about how, as a society, people have been dissuaded, or that chilling effect that you alluded to comes down upon them because they've expressed themselves or said the wrong things, it would happen to be because employers side on err on the side of caution, and they don't want folks saying but so much, and that's problematic in and of itself.
Huge congrats again to Kobe. Rings and Oscars, so impressive, and Chuck's the best. Will, we'll see you later on radio, 3 to 6 Eastern, ESPN Radio, ESPN News, The Will Cain Show. Check it out.
But anyway, that's the conversation pertaining to Charles Barkley and Kobe Bryant. deciding to jump down the woke rabbit hole behind LeBron James, who himself is trying to take all the clout away from Colin Kaepernick, who pretty much has been relegated to the closet now, most likely strapped down to some chair with some electric suction cups on his forehead, maybe some on top of his big afro, so that his girl Ness Nitty could charge him up and send him back out there to cause some more confusion down the line. But we'll see what's going to be the procession after this. Like I stated, please watch for Mr. Kobe Bryant to make some type of an appearance in a wig or cross-dressing in the near future, as he has decided that he's going to become a major portion of Hollywood. For them to give him an Oscar, they've already let him know what he needs to do. But anyway, peace.